In a world of constant change and fleeting attention, there are still places where time is measured not by screens or notifications, but by the rising of the sun and the turning of the seasons. There are still people who rise before dawn for reasons that have nothing to do with alarms and everything to do with duty and tradition. The soil calls them, and they answer with hands that are weathered by years of labor and hearts that are steady despite the storms. This chapter opens our journey into the meaning of honest work through the life of a man whose story spans decades and generations. His name is never spoken in dialogue because this story is not a conversation. It is an exploration of what it means to give your life to the land, to feel the weight of responsibility and the joy of purpose. Standing on the porch of a farmhouse in the pre-dawn darkness, our protagonist looks across fields that his father carved out of prairie half a century ago. The air is cool and carries the scent of dew and soil, a fragrance that only those who live close to the earth truly understand. He feels the boards beneath his boots creak in familiar places, each sound a reminder of the countless mornings he has stood in this very spot. As the first light begins to paint the horizon, the silhouette of barns, silos, and fences emerges, each structure bearing witness to years of honest work. The wind moves through the cornfields like a whisper, rustling leaves that shimmer silver in the twilight. The rhythm of that sound is a song he has known his entire life. From which city in the world are you watching this story unfold? When you think about courage and unexpected moments that change everything, do stories like this resonate with you? If you find yourself drawn to the quiet strength of the people who feed nations and the dignity of labor that never makes headlines, consider subscribing. This channel exists for those who believe that perseverance, integrity, and hard work still matter. In a world that often forgets the value of sweat and patience, it is a tribute to farmers, ranchers, and the silent heroes who refuse to let their legacies fade. This narrative will take you through storms and droughts, through moments of doubt and triumph, and through the internal landscapes of a man whose life is a testament to what honest work can mean. As the light grows stronger, the rooster crows from a nearby coop, and chickens stir beneath the red glow of a heat lamp. In the pasture beyond the barn, cattle begin to move, their breath visible in the chill air. He knows their names not because he has given them human labels, but because each animal has its own quirks and patterns that he has learned through observation and care. The cows with the distinctive white patches always gather near the old oak tree when they sense a storm. The younger calves stay close to their mothers until they feel secure. These details matter because they are part of the rhythm of life on a farm, a rhythm that demands attention and respect. He steps off the porch and his boots crunch on gravel as he walks toward the barn. Every step is a memory. He remembers following his father along this same path when he was a boy, carrying a pail that was almost too heavy for small hands. He remembers the way his father's stride seemed impossibly long and the way he had to jog to keep up. He also remembers the first time he made this walk alone, after his father was gone and the responsibility of the land rested entirely on his shoulders. That morning was different. The air felt heavier and the silence deeper. But he did not falter. Honest work does not pause for grief or hesitation. It continues because life depends on it. Inside the barn, the smell of hay and animals envelops him. He runs his hand along the wooden stall as he passes, feeling the grooves worn smooth by decades of use. He slides open the feed room door and measures out grain for the cattle. Each scoop is measured not by scale, but by a practiced eye and an intuitive sense of what is needed. Animals rely on consistency and trust. When you work with them every day, they know your footsteps, your voice, your pace. Even though no words are spoken in this story, the bond between man and animal is palpable. He pours the grain into troughs and watches as the cattle move toward it, their bodies strong and sturdy, built by generations of good breeding and careful management. As he works, he thinks about the meaning of honest work. It is not just about doing tasks, it is about commitment. Honest work means showing up fully, giving attention to details even when no one is watching. It means honoring the legacy left by those who came before and setting an example for those who will come after. When he thinks of his father, he remembers the tired eyes that still held a spark of joy after a long day in the fields. He remembers the stories his father told at the end of harvest, tales of seasons when the rain would not come and seasons when the sun seemed to burn everything it touched. Through it all, his father kept going because to him there was no alternative. That perseverance is part of the inheritance that cannot be recorded in a ledger or passed through a will. It is carried in the way he carries himself. There is a peculiar satisfaction in honest work that does not come from applause or accolades. It comes from knowing that the tasks you complete matter. When he fixes a fence, he knows it will protect animals. When he plants a crop, he knows it will feed families he will never meet. When he makes decisions about crop rotation or cover crops, he is thinking years ahead, about soil health and sustainability. The gratification is delayed and intangible, but it is deep. It is the feeling at the end of the day when your muscles ache and your clothes are stained and you sit on that same porch and watch the sunset, knowing that you have done what needed to be done. That feeling cannot be bought or faked. This chapter introduces the theme of honest work not as a romanticized notion, but as a lived reality. It asks you to look beyond the idyllic scenes of rolling fields and think about the routines, the physical labor, and the mental resilience required to maintain those fields. It invites you into a world where success is measured by the health of the soil, the contentment of animals, and the strength of relationships. It sets the stage for a story that will delve deeply into one man's life while reflecting the experiences of countless others who live by similar values. The meaning of honest work is not static. It evolves with each season, each challenge, and each generation. As we move into the next chapter, we will step back in time to understand how this farm began and how those early days shaped everything that followed. To understand the meaning of honest work on this land, we must travel back to a time when the soil was a blank canvas and opportunity came wrapped in hard edges. Decades before our protagonist walked down the gravel path alone, his father arrived in this part of Iowa with little more than hope, a willingness to labor, and a commitment to build something that would outlast him. The early years were not romantic. They were defined by back-breaking effort and uncertainty. The farm did not yet have the barns and silos that now dot the horizon. It was an expanse of prairie with grasses that blew in waves under a relentless sky. To turn that prairie into a farm required more than physical strength. It required vision and the determination to face setbacks without surrender. His father had learned the value of honest work from his own parents, who had survived economic collapse and dust storms. They taught him that land ownership was not just a financial asset, but a promise to nurture and care for something larger than himself. When he purchased these fields, he knew he was taking on more than debt. He was taking on the legacy of stewardship. In those first months, he cut through the tall grasses with a scythe because there was no tractor yet. Each swing of the blade was a declaration that he intended to stay and make this place his own. He worked from dawn until dark, his hands blistered and his muscles aching. He slept a few hours and then did it again, day after day, season after season. Those early days were filled with challenges that test any farmer's resolve. There were storms that flattened young crops, leaving muddy fields and flattened hopes. There were pests that seemed to appear overnight, devouring seedlings that had taken weeks to coax from the ground. There were mechanical failures when borrowed equipment broke at the worst possible moment, leaving him standing in a field with a broken belt and an urgent deadline. Each challenge was an opportunity to either despair or problem solve. His father chose the latter. He improvised repairs with wire and ingenuity. He learned to read the weather by watching the clouds and feeling the wind. He learned that complaining about circumstances rarely changes them, but adjusting your approach does. As the years passed, the farm grew piece by piece. A modest barn was erected first, built with the help of neighbors who understood that survival in rural communities often depends on collaboration. Men gathered with hammers and nails, and women brought food and laughter, and by the end of the day, a frame stood that would shelter livestock from winter winds. That barn still stands, though its roof has been repaired more times than he can count. Its boards bear the scars of storms and the handprints of generations. Each scratch and nail mark tells a story that is invisible to outsiders, but clear to those who know the farm's history. Inside the farmhouse, the rhythm of daily life was set by the seasons. In spring, there was urgency. Seeds had to be planted at the right time, not too early for fear of frost, not too late for fear of missing the window when the soil temperature was perfect. In summer, there was constant motion. Weeds needed to be kept at bay, animals needed water, equipment needed maintenance. In autumn, there was harvest. Days were long, running from early morning until late night under the glare of tractor lights. Grain flowed into wagons and then into bins, a tangible reward for months of labor. In winter, there was planning and repair. Fields lay bare under snow, and in the quiet of shorter days, plans for the next year were drawn, equipment was fixed, and finances were reviewed. In those early years, money was tight. There were times when his father considered taking a second job in town to make ends meet. He picked up odd jobs to supplement income, delivering milk, mending fences for neighbors, working as a mechanic at a local shop. Every extra dollar went back into the farm. There was no luxury. There was just necessity. But through those years, something intangible was being built alongside the physical structures, a sense of purpose that could not be purchased. The farm was not just a business. It was a way of life. It provided food for the family, taught children the value of work, and connected them to a community of people who understood the same sacrifices. One of the stories that still circulates at county fairs and church potlucks is about the year a tornado touched down 2 miles from the farm. It did not hit the house directly, but the winds were strong enough to tear shingles from the roof and knock down fences. Corn that had been knee-high one day was flattened the next. His father stood in the doorway that evening, looking at the damage, and then he went to the barn, gathered whatever tools he had, and began repairs before the wind had even fully died down. It was an instinctive response. Do what you can with what you have. That night, neighbors arrived unannounced with hammers and boards, and by the following afternoon, the roof was patched and the fences were standing. That experience reinforced the idea that honest work is not done in isolation. It is supported by community and reciprocated with gratitude. The children grew up in the midst of this environment. They learned to feed animals before they could read. They understood the difference between a wrench and a screwdriver before they mastered multiplication. Their classroom was often the field, where lessons were taught by observation and participation. They learned that a storm could change plans in an instant, and that complaining about the weather was a waste of breath. They learned that sometimes the best decisions are the hardest. Selling livestock in order to pay bills, planting a cover crop instead of a cash crop to restore soil health, sacrificing short-term gains for long-term sustainability. Through it all, they internalized the values of perseverance, responsibility, and humility. Our protagonist, as the eldest son, absorbed these lessons deeply. He watched his father's shoulders carry both physical weight and the weight of expectation. He saw his father pray over meals with gratitude even when the pantry was sparse. He felt the unspoken pressure to continue the legacy, to honor the sacrifices that had been made, and to ensure that the farm would remain in the family. When he was a teenager, he began to take on more responsibility. He drove the tractor during planting season, careful to keep his rows straight. He learned to diagnose a sick calf by observing its behavior and appetite. He listened to the older farmers at the feed store talk about market prices, weather patterns, and politics, and he realized that being a farmer required more than physical strength. It required knowledge of economics, biology, and meteorology. Farmers might live in rural areas, but they must understand complex systems. By the time he reached adulthood, the farm was more stable, but the work was no less demanding. There were decisions about whether to expand acreage, diversify crops, invest in new machinery, or take on debt. Each choice carried risk. Each success was hard-earned. Through it all, he never lost sight of the values his father instilled. Honest work is not about shortcuts or quick profits. It is about integrity in the face of temptation. It means doing what is right for the land, even if it means less money in the short term. It means treating workers and neighbors with respect, even when competition is fierce. It means acknowledging mistakes and learning from them rather than hiding them. It is a standard that is both high and non-negotiable. As this chapter draws to a close, imagine the farmhouse table at the end of a long harvest day. The family sits together, hands still bearing the marks of the day's labor, and shares a meal that comes from the very ground they tend. Laughter fills the room not because the work is easy, but because the shared effort creates bonds that cannot be replicated elsewhere. Stories are told about the year the combine broke down in the middle of the field, about the time a cow gave birth unexpectedly and the children had to help, about the summer when rain washed out half the corn, but the soybeans thrived. These stories are not about external recognition, but about internal satisfaction. They celebrate the small victories and acknowledge the shared struggles. They remind everyone at the table that honest work is both individual and collective, rooted in past sacrifices and future hopes. In the next chapter, we will move forward in time to explore what a typical day looks like for our protagonist in the present. We will follow him through tasks that may seem mundane but are the backbone of his life. In those routines, we will continue to uncover the layers of meaning that honest work carries, especially when it is performed with intention and care. Stay with us as we transition from the farm's origin story to the daily rhythm that defines it today. The dawn has given way to full morning, and with it comes the cadence of a typical day on this farm. There is no such thing as punching a clock here, yet the hours are filled with tasks that have a rhythm as predictable as any factory. The meaning of honest work is not found in grand gestures, but in the accumulation of countless small actions that sustain life. This chapter follows our protagonist through a day that may seem ordinary from the outside, but is rich with purpose. From the first chores to the final check on animals at night, every motion carries intention. After feeding the cattle, he moves to the poultry house. The chickens are restless and hungry, their clucks and flutters filling the air. He scatters feed and collects eggs, placing them carefully in a basket. Each egg represents nourishment for his family and a small contribution to the local market. He inspects the coop for any signs of weakness or intrusion because predators are a constant threat. A hole in wire or a loose latch is the difference between safety and loss. Honest work includes vigilance, a proactive stance against potential problems. Next, he checks on the fields. The corn is high, leaves broad and green, swaying gently in the breeze. He walks down a row, feeling the soil beneath his boots, looking for signs of pests or disease. He kneels and squeezes a handful of soil, testing its moisture. Too dry means it is time to irrigate if there is water available. Too wet means he must be patient and trust that the sun will do its part. The rows of soybean plants show a different shade of green, and he examines them for nodules that indicate healthy nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Farming is as much science as it is art, requiring constant observation and understanding of complex biological processes. Years of experience have refined his instincts. He knows when a plant's color suggests nutrient deficiency and when it is simply the effect of temporary stress. After walking the fields, he returns to the barn to repair a section of fence that was damaged in the night. Fences are the unsung heroes of a farm. They keep animals safe, protect crops, and define property lines. Honest work means maintaining these boundaries even when it feels monotonous. He gathers tools, a hammer, nails, wire, and posts. He removes the broken boards and replaces them, ensuring that the structure is solid. As he hammers, he thinks of all the times he did this chore with his children by his side, small hands passing nails and learning the feel of wood and metal. Those memories warm him even as the morning sun begins to climb higher. Mid-morning brings a trip to the equipment shed. Machinery is both a blessing and a burden. It increases efficiency but requires maintenance and investment. He checks the oil in the tractor, cleans the air filter, and inspects belts for wear. Any neglect here will result in downtime later, which can be disastrous during critical planting or harvest windows. He remembers when his father's first tractor was a used model that broke down frequently. They spent more time under the machine than in it, learning to be mechanics by necessity. Now technology has advanced, but the principle remains. Take care of your tools, and they will take care of you. Honest work on the farm also involves mental labor. Over lunch, he sits at his kitchen table with ledgers and digital spreadsheets. He reviews commodity prices, checks the weather forecast, and calculates input costs. Should he sell corn now or hold in hopes of higher prices later? Should he invest in a new piece of equipment or repair the old one for another year? Each decision can have significant financial consequences. This is the aspect of farming that many outsiders do not see. It is not just physical labor. It is also strategic planning, risk management, and constant learning. He does not have a finance degree, but he understands markets because he has had to. Years of watching prices rise and fall have taught him to spot patterns and to hedge against risk. He knows that honest work includes the diligence to study, to ask questions, and to make informed decisions. After lunch, he heads out to check the pastures. The cattle are grazing peacefully. He walks the perimeter, checking for signs of hoof rot or injuries. He spots a calf that seems listless and notes that he will need to monitor it more closely. Perhaps it is just the heat, or perhaps it is the beginning of an illness. Early intervention often makes the difference between recovery and loss. He remembers times when he missed such signs and the regret that followed. Those experiences have sharpened his awareness and taught him that honest work means paying attention even when things appear normal. The afternoon is dedicated to repairing a section of tile drainage in a low-lying field. Proper drainage is essential to prevent waterlogging, which can kill crops and degrade soil structure. He digs carefully, exposing the clay tiles laid decades ago by his father and uncle. Some of them are cracked or clogged. He replaces them with modern perforated plastic pipe, ensuring that water will flow away from the root zone. As he works, sweat runs down his face and mud coats his boots. There is no glamour in digging trenches, but there is satisfaction in knowing that these unseen efforts will improve yields and protect the soil. Honest work often involves tasks that no one will ever see, but that make all the difference. Late in the afternoon, he heads to a neighboring farm to help bale hay. Cooperation among farmers is a cornerstone of rural life. He knows that next week, when he needs help with his own hay, his neighbors will be there. The fields are dotted with bales and the air is filled with the sweet scent of freshly cut grass. He operates the baler while others stack the bales onto wagons. The process is physically demanding, but there is camaraderie in shared labor. Stories are exchanged, jokes are told, and while there is no dialogue in this narrative, the warmth of community is felt. Honest work is not only about solitary effort, it is about being part of a network where everyone's contributions matter. As evening approaches, he returns home, tired but not finished. There is an injured lamb that needs attention. He cleans a small wound and applies ointment, then checks the waterers and feeders one last time. The sun is low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He stands in the doorway of the barn and takes a moment to breathe deeply, absorbing the beauty of the moment. Honest work provides these moments of quiet gratitude when the world feels at peace and the day's efforts are rewarded with simple sights and sounds. Dinner is a hearty meal of roasted meat, potatoes, and vegetables that came from the garden. He eats with his family, sharing the events of the day. His spouse talks about plans for the garden. His daughter shares news from town. And his grandson tells of school projects involving agriculture. The family's bond is strengthened over meals and shared stories. There is a sense of continuity, of traditions handed down and adapted with each generation. Honest work has allowed this family to live with purpose and to teach values that transcend occupation. After dinner, while others relax, he steps outside again. The stars are beginning to appear, and the moon casts a soft glow over the fields. He walks out to the fence line, flashlight in hand, to make sure that gates are closed and that no animals have strayed. He stops for a moment and listens. The sounds of the farm are different at night. There is the lowing of cattle, the occasional neigh of a horse, the rustle of wind through corn. These sounds soothe him. He looks up at the vast sky and feels small in the best way. Honest work is humbling. It reminds you that you are part of something larger, that the cycles of nature continue regardless of your concerns. You do your part, and the earth responds with abundance or restraint, teaching you to accept both. Before turning in, he takes out a worn notebook and jots down notes about the day. He records the repairs he completed, the health status of the animals, and any observations that might influence future decisions. These records are valuable. They allow him to see patterns over time, to learn from past mistakes, and to plan for the future. He learned this habit from his father, who kept meticulous notes in ledgers. Those old notebooks now sit on a shelf, their pages yellowed but their information still relevant. Honest work includes documentation, an acknowledgement that memory is fallible and that writing things down is a form of respect for the process. When he finally goes to bed, his body is exhausted, but his mind is calm. He has done what needed to be done. He has responded to the demands of the land, cared for his animals, maintained his equipment, connected with his community, and managed his finances. There is satisfaction in this completeness. As he drifts off to sleep, he knows that tomorrow will bring another set of tasks and challenges, but the cycle of honest work is one he embraces willingly. It is the rhythm that structures his days and gives his life meaning. In the next chapter, we will look at the challenges that have tested him over the years. We will explore droughts and floods, market crashes, and personal losses. Through these trials, the concept of honest work takes on new dimensions, revealing resilience and faith. Stay with us as we explore how adversity shapes character and deepens the connection between a farmer and the land. No life dedicated to the land is without trials. The myth of the farmer as an unchanging figure in an unchanging landscape fades quickly when reality intrudes. Weather patterns shift, markets fluctuate, and personal tragedies strike without warning. Honest work does not immunize anyone from suffering. Instead, it equips them to navigate it. This chapter explores some of the challenges that have tested our protagonist over the decades. In these moments of struggle, the meaning of honest work expands to include resilience, humility, and a willingness to lean on others when necessary. One summer stands out in his memory as the year the rain refused to come. It began with high hopes. Seeds were planted on time, the soil was warm, and early sprouts pushed through the surface. But by June, the sky held its blue promise without delivering rain. Weeks stretched into months with only occasional showers, and the once green fields turned a dull, stressed color. Corn leaves curled inward to conserve moisture, Soybeans stood stunted in the heat, and pastures turned brown. Each day he walked the fields, hoping for clouds that never materialized. Irrigation was limited. A small reservoir and well could not replace the blessing of a steady downpour. He watched as the yield projections dropped and the financial implications became clearer. It is one thing to work hard and see results. It is another to work hard and see your efforts evaporate under a merciless sun. During that drought, he learned the true meaning of resourcefulness and the value of community. He sold hay to neighbors whose fields were even worse, not to make a profit, but to ensure that their cattle would survive. He bartered services, repairing equipment in exchange for feed. He adjusted his planting plans for the following year, incorporating more drought-resistant crops and cover crops that could retain soil moisture. He and his spouse sat at the kitchen table, reworking budgets, cutting non-essential expenses, and discussing whether to apply for government assistance programs. They decided to apply not out of pride, but out of necessity. Honest work includes the humility to ask for help when the situation is beyond one's control. Accepting assistance does not diminish the value of the work. It acknowledges that we are all connected and that sometimes surviving means reaching out. Another challenge came in the form of a flood. It was early spring, after a winter of heavy snow. When the thaw came, the river, swollen by melting snow and rains, overflowed its banks. Water rushed into low-lying fields, carrying debris and silt, submerging fences, and turning soil into soup. The pasture where cattle had grazed became a shallow lake. The floodwaters filled the first floor of the barn, soaking hay and bedding. He and his family worked tirelessly to move equipment and animals to higher ground, wading through icy water with numb feet and cold hands. They improvised shelters on a hilltop, using tarps and pallets to create dry spaces for livestock. The flood lasted days, and the damage was extensive. Fences were destroyed, soil fertility was impacted, and some livestock were lost to illness that followed. In the aftermath, he faced the daunting task of cleanup and restoration. The work was messy and disheartening. Mud coated everything, and the smell of rotting vegetation lingered. Yet, as neighbors arrived with shovels and equipment, a sense of solidarity emerged. They formed a human chain to remove debris and salvage what they could. They shared stories of previous floods, offering both practical advice and moral support. He realized again that honest work is not solitary heroism. It is part of a wider network of people who understand that we are stronger together. When the fields dried enough to replant, he did so with gratitude for the help he received and with a renewed appreciation for the power of nature. Economic challenges have also left their mark. There were years when the price of corn fell so low that the cost of production exceeded the potential revenue. There were years when high input costs, fuel, fertilizer, seed, eroded profit margins. There were moments when he wondered if it made financial sense to continue farming. During one such downturn, he considered selling part of the land to stay solvent. The thought of dividing the property that his father had fought for pained him. He sought advice from financial advisors, peers, and mentors. Together with his family, he made tough choices, delaying the purchase of new machinery, repairing old equipment, and taking off-farm jobs temporarily to supplement income. He learned that honest work includes flexibility. Sometimes the most responsible thing to do is to adapt your business model to survive. He diversified his crops, experimented with different markets, and incorporated value-added products like grass-fed beef and specialty grains. These decisions were not guaranteed successes, but they represented calculated risks grounded in research and community knowledge. Personal loss has been the most profound challenge. When his father passed away after a sudden illness, the farm became both sanctuary and burden. Grief weighed heavily, and yet the cows still needed to be fed and the crops still needed to be planted. There was no time to retreat completely into mourning. Honest work demands presence, even when emotions are raw. The act of working offered solace. The routine tasks provided a rhythm that allowed him to process his grief. He remembered the lessons his father taught about perseverance, faith, and love of the land, and those lessons guided him through the darkest days. Later, when his spouse battled a serious illness, the farm community rallied around them. Neighbors brought meals, offered to do chores, and sat with him in hospital waiting rooms. In those moments, honest work revealed itself not as stoic independence, but as a web of relationships that sustain people through crisis. There have been injuries too. A broken arm from a fall off a ladder, a twisted ankle from stepping in a gopher hole, a back strain from lifting more than he should. Each injury served as a reminder that farming is physically demanding and that caring for oneself is part of caring for the farm. He learned to delegate tasks temporarily and to listen when his body signaled that it needed rest. He learned that being stubborn can be an asset in some situations, but a liability when it prevents healing. Honest work is about pushing hard when necessary and resting when wise, understanding that burnout benefits no one. Mental health has been another layer of challenge. There were nights when he lay awake, worry looping through his mind, fueled by headlines about trade wars or pandemics, by concerns about climate change, or by the weight of debt. In those times, he felt alone in his concerns even though he was surrounded by family and friends. It was a neighbor who first suggested attending a support group for farmers facing stress and depression. Hesitant but open-minded, he went. There, he found people who understood his experiences intimately. They spoke about pressure, isolation, and fear with honesty. He discovered that honest work includes acknowledging internal struggles and seeking help when mental strain becomes too heavy. It includes checking in with neighbors and friends not just about crops, but about well-being. That decision to seek support was as important as any business decision he made. It allowed him to continue working without collapsing under the weight of unspoken anxiety. Through droughts and floods, market crashes, and personal losses, he has continued to get up before dawn and walk that gravel path. Honest work has taught him that resilience is not about never bending, but about bending without breaking. It is about drawing strength from faith, family, and community. It is about making adjustments in the face of new information and accepting help when it is needed. It is about honoring the past while adapting to the future. Each challenge has carved lines in his face, calluses on his hands, and depth in his character. Each trial has deepened his understanding that honest work is not a shield against hardship, but a set of tools to face it. As we prepare to move into the next chapter, keep in mind that adversity does not define a life, but it reveals what a person values. For our protagonist, adversity has clarified his commitment to the land and to the people around him. In the next chapter, we will explore how these experiences have shaped his relationships with family and community, and how the legacy of honest work is passed forward. We will meet the younger generation and see how they interpret and adapt these values in a changing world. Join us as the story continues to unfold, bridging past challenges with future possibilities. The story of honest work on this farm does not end with one man. It is woven into the lives of those who came before him and those who follow. Legacy is not a static monument, but a living thread that passes through time, adapted and strengthened by each generation. In this chapter, we explore how our protagonist has nurtured relationships with his family and community, ensuring that the values of perseverance, integrity, and stewardship continue. We also look at how younger family members are interpreting the meaning of honest work in a world that is both familiar and rapidly changing. He and his spouse raised 3 children in the farmhouse where he himself grew up. The walls that once echoed with his father's footsteps now bear the marks of children's growth charts and handprints pressed into concrete steps. From a young age, the children were involved in the farm's operations. They rode on the tractor, their small bodies dwarfed by the seat, learning to steer down straight. Rows. They helped care for animals, learning to recognize the signs of a content cow or a distressed sheep. They participated in 4-H, raising livestock for county fairs, and in doing so, they learned responsibility and the connection between care and outcome. Honest work was not a chore to be avoided, but a shared family endeavor that taught them about accountability and pride. Each child responded to the farm differently. His eldest daughter loved the rhythm of planting and harvest. She pursued agricultural science in college, bringing back new ideas about soil health and sustainable practices. She introduced cover crops that improved nitrogen levels and reduced erosion. She advocated for no-till practices that preserved soil structure and carbon content. At first, her father was skeptical. He had learned to plow, and the sight of black soil turning over had always signaled progress to him. But he listened to his daughter, read the research, and together they ran trials. The results were impressive: improved yields, reduced fuel costs, and healthier soil. Honest work includes humility and openness to innovation. It means recognizing that tradition and progress can coexist when guided by shared values. His middle son gravitated toward livestock. He developed a keen sense for animal husbandry, learning to spot illness before it became critical and understanding genetics to improve the herd. He introduced new breeds with better feed conversion and greater resilience to temperature fluctuations. He also championed rotational grazing practices that allowed pastures to recover and reduce the need for supplemental feed. Working with his father, he designed paddock systems that made moving cattle easier and improved pasture utilization. Their partnership was built on mutual respect. The son's enthusiasm for science complemented the father's experience. Honest work, they discovered, could evolve without losing its core. It could incorporate technology and data while still valuing the tactile knowledge of years spent in the field. The youngest child had less interest in day-to-day farm operations, but possessed a talent for storytelling and communication. She documented farm life through photographs and writing, sharing the realities of rural work with a wider audience. She created a blog and later a video channel that showcased the beauty and challenges of farming. Her posts highlighted the early mornings, the long days, the weather uncertainties, and the sense of purpose that carried the family through. She also used her platform to educate urban viewers about where their food came from and to advocate for policies that supported small farmers. This work was different from physical labor, but it was honest work in its own right. It required integrity, research, and a desire to bridge the gap between producers and consumers. Her father, who initially did not understand why anyone would be interested in watching videos of feeding cattle, came to see the value in her work. By sharing their story, she honored their legacy and invited others to appreciate the unseen labor behind their meals. Grandchildren have now begun to visit the farm regularly, especially during summer vacation. They run through the fields with the same carefree energy their parents once did. They help gather eggs, weed the garden, and bottle feed orphaned lambs. They also bring questions about drones, apps, and climate change. They live in a world where technology is ubiquitous, and they are curious about how it intersects with farming. Their grandfather listens to their questions and, when appropriate, incorporates their suggestions. A drone with a camera has become a useful tool for checking fence lines and monitoring crop health without walking every acre. A smartphone app helps track rainfall and soil moisture across different fields. Honest work, he realizes, now includes data analysis and remote sensing. The essence remains: attention, care, responsibility. But the tools have evolved. Community involvement has always been part of farm life, and this continues with new generations. The family participates in local agricultural organizations, from the county extension board to the volunteer fire department. They host school field trips, inviting students to see crops up close, touch livestock, and understand the effort required to produce food. They donate pumpkins to preschools and host classes on grafting apple trees and pressing cider, sharing knowledge that extends beyond their own operation. These activities are not undertaken for recognition, but because honest work includes sharing knowledge and resources. It strengthens the community and fosters appreciation for agriculture among people who may never set foot on a farm otherwise. The farm has diversified over time. Inspired by a family in a nearby county who turned a small orchard into a winery, they planted a few acres of fruit trees. The orchard became a place where 3 generations worked side by side, pruning branches in winter and picking fruit in autumn. They learned about varieties that thrive in their climate, including heirloom apples and pears. From this orchard, they began making small batches of cider and jam, selling them at the local farmers' market. The diversification provided additional income and engaged different family members' interests. It also taught them patience, as fruit trees take years to mature. Honest work requires planning beyond the current season. You plant knowing that someone else may harvest the benefits. It is an exercise in faith. As the world faces climate change, their farm faces new challenges. Weather patterns have become less predictable. There are more extreme rain events and prolonged droughts. In response, the younger generation has pushed for soil conservation practices, renewable energy, and water management. Solar panels on the barn roof provide electricity for some operations. Rainwater catchment system helps irrigate the orchard. They have joined a network of farmers experimenting with carbon sequestration practices, hoping to both improve their soil and contribute to broader environmental goals. Honest work now includes participation in global conversations about sustainability. They attend meetings, read scientific studies, and share their experiences with peers. The family also navigates the complexities of land inheritance. As our protagonist ages, he thinks about succession planning. He knows the stories of families torn apart by disagreements over land. To avoid that, he engages his children in frank discussions about their interests, the farm's finances, and the future. They work with an attorney to create a succession plan that honors everyone. The plan allows those who want to continue farming to do so, while fairly compensating those who choose other paths. This process is emotionally charged because the farm is more than property. It is a repository of memories, sacrifices, and hopes. Honest work includes making difficult decisions with transparency and fairness, even when emotions run high. In the wider community, the family is known not just for their productivity, but for their willingness to help. When a neighbor's barn burned down, they organized a barn raising, contributing labor and materials. When a young family moved to the area to start farming, they invited them over, shared resources, and offered mentorship. They also advocate for mental health awareness in agriculture, hosting workshops and speaking about their experiences with stress and seeking support. They understand that honest work includes taking care of people as well as animals and land. They encourage others to ask for help and to check on one another regularly. Through these interactions, the meaning of honest work continues to evolve. It is rooted in the soil but reaches into classrooms, community centers, and social media. It encompasses physical labor, intellectual inquiry, creative expression, and civic engagement. Each family member finds their own way to contribute, guided by the values that have been passed down. Our protagonist watches with pride as his children and grandchildren not only carry forward the legacy, but enrich it. He sees that honest work is not a relic of the past, but a living practice that adapts to new contexts while maintaining its core principles. As this chapter concludes, reflect on the connections that sustain this farm, the lineage of knowledge, the intergenerational cooperation, the community ties, and the willingness to embrace change without compromising values. In the next chapter, we will delve into how our protagonist understands the meaning of honest work on a personal level. We will explore his reflections and philosophy, gleaned from decades of labor and contemplation. We will see how faith, love, and a sense of duty intertwine to give depth to his daily tasks. Join us as we transition from the external manifestations of honest work to the internal landscape of a farmer's heart. While the physical tasks of farming are visible to anyone who visits, the internal life of a farmer often remains hidden. Honest work is not only measured in bushels and bales, it is also measured in the thoughts and intentions that accompany each action. In this chapter, we explore the personal reflections and philosophy of our protagonist as he contemplates the meaning of honest work after decades of tending the same land. Through his introspection, we see how faith, love, and duty interweave to imbue routine tasks with profound significance. When he rises before dawn, there's a moment of stillness in the house. In that quiet, he takes a few breaths to prepare himself. He views each day as a gift and a responsibility. He has come to see the early hours as sacred time, a chance to align his intentions with his actions. He does not recite prayers aloud in this narrative, but faith shapes his approach. He believes that the land is entrusted to him and that his role is one of stewardship, not ownership. This perspective influences his decisions about fertilization, pesticide use, and crop selection. He aims to leave the soil healthier than he found it. Honest work, for him, is an act of gratitude to the Creator and the community that depends on his labor. Walking through the fields, he sometimes pauses to run his hand over the leaves, feeling their texture and warmth. These moments are opportunities to connect with living things in a way that transcends utility. He respects the miracle of growth, the way a tiny seed becomes a towering stalk or a lush vine. He recalls the words his father once said during a season of uncertainty, that plants grow not because we command them, but because we cooperate with the forces of nature. This cooperation requires humility. He understands that he is not in control of everything. Weather, disease, and market forces lie beyond his influence. Honest work involves doing his best within his sphere of control and accepting the outcomes with grace. He also reflects on the notion of prosperity. In a society that often equates success with financial wealth, he has had to define prosperity differently. There were years when the farm brought in less income than hoped, yet his family was fed, the community was supported, and the land was cared for. He measures success by the health of his soil, the well-being of his animals, the integrity of his relationships, and the knowledge that he has acted ethically. He finds richness in watching his children grow into thoughtful adults, in seeing his grandchildren run through fields, and in the satisfaction of a job well done. Honest work yields rewards that cannot be quantified on a balance sheet. It offers a sense of alignment between values and actions. Another element of his philosophy is the balance between independence and interdependence. Farmers often pride themselves on self-reliance, but he has learned that true resilience comes from connections. He takes pride in being able to repair a machine, mend a fence, or manage his finances. At the same time, he acknowledges that he cannot know everything. He seeks advice from agronomists about soil health, from veterinarians about animal care, and from financial advisors about debt management. He consults with neighbors about weather patterns and market trends. Honest work includes collaboration. It recognizes that expertise can be shared and that pride should not prevent learning. Time has also taught him the importance of rest and reflection. In his younger years, he believed that working longer hours was always better. He pushed through fatigue, skipped meals, and sacrificed sleep. Over time, he experienced the consequences of that approach: injuries, burnout, and strained relationships. As he aged, he began to incorporate intentional rest into his routine. He takes breaks to sit under a tree and listen to birds. He spends winter evenings reading, studying agricultural journals, and reflecting on the season. He understands that rest is not laziness, but a necessary part of sustainable labor. It allows him to return to work with clarity and strength. Honest work includes self-care, recognizing that the worker is as important as the work. He often thinks about the concept of legacy, not just the physical inheritance of land, but the values that are passed along. He wonders what his children and grandchildren will remember about him. Will they recall the smell of fresh-cut hay, the warmth of the barn in winter, the taste of vegetables from the garden? Will they remember the times he apologized when he was wrong, the moments when he admitted he did not know something, and the occasions when he laughed at his own mistakes? He hopes they will remember that he valued integrity over convenience, that he chose to repair old equipment rather than discard it unnecessarily, that he treated animals with respect, never forcing them beyond their capacity, that he gave to others without expecting return. Honest work, he believes, leaves footprints not just in fields but in hearts. His reflections also include thoughts on change. He has watched the agricultural landscape evolve dramatically. He remembers when records were kept in notebooks and decisions were made with limited data. Now, data flows from satellites and sensors, and decisions are informed by complex algorithms. He embraces many of these advancements because they help him steward the land more effectively. Precision agriculture allows him to apply fertilizer only where needed, reducing waste and protecting waterways. Drones help him monitor crop health. Mobile apps connect him to markets and weather forecasts in real time. Yet he also guards against becoming dependent on technology at the expense of judgment. He still walks his fields because seeing and feeling plants offers insights that screens cannot. For him, honest work requires combining new tools with old wisdom. As he contemplates his place in the wider world, he considers the social dimensions of farming. Agriculture is deeply embedded in national culture and politics. Policies about trade, subsidies, and environmental regulations affect his livelihood. He engages with these issues not as an abstract observer, but as someone whose daily choices are shaped by them. He reads policy papers, attends local meetings, and sometimes writes letters to representatives. He knows that honest work includes civic participation. It means using his voice to advocate for fair policies that support small and medium-sized farms, protect the environment, and ensure food security. His engagement is grounded not in ideology, but in a desire to see his community flourish. Faith continues to be a guiding force. He attends church on Sundays when chores permit, not out of obligation, but out of desire to be part of a community that reflects on moral and spiritual matters. He finds comfort in hymns and in listening to others share their struggles and joys. Faith anchors him during crises and reminds him that his identity is not solely defined by his productivity. He approaches his work as an offering, mindful that the fruits of his labor feed bodies and souls. Honest work, in his view, is a form of worship, a way of expressing gratitude for the life he has been given. At night, when fatigue settles in and the world grows quiet, he sometimes stands by the bedroom window and looks out over the dark fields. He thinks about the countless seeds that lie beneath the surface, waiting to germinate, about the cycles of birth and growth that continue without his direct involvement. He reflects on the fact that his life is small in the grand scheme of things, and yet it matters. The meaning of honest work is found in that paradox, recognizing one's smallness while also embracing responsibility. Each day is an opportunity to align actions with values, to care for creation, to support others, and to find joy in tasks that are often overlooked. As we close this introspective chapter, consider what motivates your actions. How do your values influence your daily work? Do you find meaning in tasks that others deem mundane? Our protagonist has learned that honest work is not just about what you do, but about why and how you do it. In the next chapter, we will return to the broader community and explore how these personal philosophies translate into tangible actions that support neighbors, advocate for mental health, and foster resilience. Join us as we look at the communal aspects of honest work and how they enrich the lives of everyone involved. The philosophy of honest work finds expression not only on individual farms, but also within the wider community. In rural areas, neighbors depend on one another in ways that urban dwellers might not fully appreciate. In this chapter, we explore how our protagonist engages with his community, how he and others support mental health and resilience, and how the values of integrity and generosity manifest in communal life. These stories illustrate that honest work, when shared, multiplies its impact. Every season brings opportunities for mutual aid. When spring planting is delayed by weather, neighbors share equipment and manpower to ensure that everyone gets crops in the ground within the optimal window. When harvest approaches, they coordinate schedules so that combines and grain carts can move efficiently from field to field. These cooperative efforts are more than pragmatic. They build relationships. For our protagonist, participating in such exchanges is second nature. He grew up watching his father drop everything to help a neighbor fix a broken baler, knowing that the favor would be returned when needed. In his own life, he has organized hay baling rotations, coordinated volunteer crews to repair barns after storms, and contributed to community seed purchases that lower costs for everyone. Honest work in the community context involves recognizing that success is intertwined. It is not a zero-sum game, but a collective endeavor. Community also means sharing knowledge. He attends extension meetings where farmers gather to learn about new research on soil health, crop diseases, and market trends. He has hosted workshops on pasture management and soil conservation, sharing his experiences with rotational grazing and cover crops. Younger farmers seek him out for advice, and he offers guidance freely. He does not see mentorship as competition. Instead, he believes that every farm that thrives makes the community stronger. He recalls a time when a young couple moved into an old farmhouse down the road with big dreams and little experience. They struggled in their first year. He and his children spent weekends helping them repair fences, showing them how to calibrate a planter, and recommending local suppliers. Today, that couple runs a successful operation and pays forward the kindness they received. Honest work includes investing time in others' growth. Mental health has become a prominent topic among farmers in recent years. The pressures of unpredictable weather, volatile markets, and high debt can lead to anxiety and depression. Our protagonist has witnessed the toll that isolation can take. He has attended funerals for farmers who could not see past their despair. These losses have convinced him that mental health is as important as physical health. He volunteers with a local group that organizes support circles and educational sessions for farmers and their families. He speaks openly about the times he has felt overwhelmed and how seeking support helped him. His willingness to be vulnerable encourages others to share their struggles. The meetings are held in barns, churches, and community centers. There is coffee, there are cookies, and there is space for honest conversation. Honest work in this context means breaking down the stigma around mental health and creating a culture where asking for help is seen as strength, not weakness. Another way he contributes to community well-being is through civic involvement. He serves on the County Soil and Water Conservation Board, where he advocates for policies that protect waterways from agricultural runoff. He participates in town hall meetings about rural health care, broadband access, and education. He believes that a thriving rural community requires more than farms. It needs schools, clinics, roads, and internet connections. He writes letters to legislators, attends rallies, and votes in every election. He encourages others to do the same, reminding them that honest work includes citizenship. The farm does not exist in a vacuum. It is part of a larger system that must function well if farmers are to succeed. Community events are a source of joy and connection. Harvest festivals, county fairs, and church suppers provide opportunities to celebrate achievements and traditions. At the county fair, our protagonist watches children show their livestock, remembering his own children doing the same. He volunteers in the agricultural education booth, explaining to visitors how corn grows and how cattle are raised. He helps with the annual Feed a Farmer program, where volunteers deliver meals to farmers who are stuck in their fields during harvest. These events strengthen the social fabric, ensuring that people see one another not just as colleagues, but as neighbors and friends. Honest work finds balance in these moments of celebration. They remind everyone why they work so hard. One story that exemplifies communal support occurred when a barn on a neighboring farm caught fire due to a lightning strike. Flames engulfed the structure, threatening to spread. Hearing the news, our protagonist and dozens of others rushed to the scene. They formed a line, passing buckets of water and sand, and helped rescue animals trapped inside. The fire department arrived, but the initial response from neighbors saved the remaining buildings. In the days that followed, they organized a barn raising. Volunteers of all ages brought hammers, nails, and food. Within a week, a new barn stood where the old one had burned. The farmers' willingness to set aside their own work to help a neighbor rebuild demonstrates the communal aspect of honest work. It is not done for recognition, but because it is the right thing to do. Generosity extends beyond emergencies. In years of abundance, our protagonist donates produce to local food banks and sells surplus at reduced prices to low-income families. He supports the school's agriculture program with donations of materials and by mentoring students. He contributes financially to scholarships for rural youth. These acts might seem small in the grand scheme, but they ripple outwards. They ensure that healthy food reaches those who need it, that young people see a future in agriculture, and that the community remains vibrant. Honest work includes generosity because true prosperity is shared prosperity. The chapter would not be complete without addressing the tensions that sometimes arise. Farmers are not monolithic in their views or practices. There are debates about organic versus conventional farming, about the use of genetically modified organisms, and about land use policies. Our protagonist has been involved in these discussions, sometimes passionately. He believes in listening first, understanding that each farmer's context is different. He advocates for respectful dialogue, seeking common ground rather than division. Honest work requires humility to admit when you are wrong and courage to stand up for what you believe is right. It means engaging in debate with civility and focusing on solutions that benefit all. As this chapter draws to a close, consider the ways that community enriches individual labor. Whether through shared knowledge, mutual aid, mental health support, civic engagement, or celebration, the bonds between neighbors amplify the impact of honest work. Our protagonist's life demonstrates that the value of work increases when it is connected to the well-being of others. In the next chapter, we will turn our attention to the future. We will examine how farmers like him are navigating a rapidly changing world, including new technologies, climate challenges, land values, and succession planning. We will see how the lessons of the past inform decisions about tomorrow. Stay with us as we look forward with hope and realism. Looking ahead, the landscape of agriculture is shifting. Farmers must adapt to changes in climate, markets, technology, and demographics. Our protagonist is no stranger to change, having witnessed transformations over decades, but the challenges and opportunities he faces now carry new complexities. In this chapter, we explore how he and his family are preparing for the future, balancing tradition with innovation, and ensuring that the farm remains resilient in an uncertain world. Climate change is perhaps the most significant force altering the rhythm of farming. The patterns he once relied on have become less predictable. Winters are milder, yet bring more ice storms. Springs are wetter. Summers alternate between drought and torrential rain, and extreme weather events occur more frequently. To respond, he and his children have implemented practices aimed at building resilience. Cover crops help retain soil moisture and to prevent erosion during heavy rains. No-till farming preserves soil structure, enabling it to absorb water more effectively. Rotational grazing enhances pasture health, allowing grasses to survive heat stress. They have also diversified their crops to include species that tolerate varying conditions, such as small grains and forage crops. Honest work now involves constant learning and adaptation, recognizing that the old calendar may no longer apply. Economic landscapes are shifting as well. Farmland values have risen in recent years, driven by factors such as investor interest and limited supply. While this increases the family's balance sheet on paper, it also makes expansion difficult and raises the stakes of succession planning. Auctions of neighboring farms attract both local farmers and investors from outside the community. Our protagonist has attended these auctions, feeling both relief when land stays within farming families and concern when outside investors buy property as a financial asset rather than to cultivate it. He discusses these issues with his children, weighing the benefits of purchasing additional acres against the risks of taking on more debt. They decide to focus on improving the productivity of their existing land rather than expanding. They invest in tile drainage and precision technology that increases yields without increasing acreage. Honest work requires careful assessment of growth opportunities and recognition of limits. The farm also explores new revenue streams to buffer against volatile commodity prices. They participate in carbon credit programs that reward farmers for practices that sequester carbon in soils, such as cover cropping and reduced tillage. The payments are modest, but signal a growing recognition of the environmental services that farms provide. They open their orchard to agritourism, offering pick-your-own-fruit experiences and hosting farm dinners that connect consumers with the land. They partner with a local co-op to produce value-added products like flour from heirloom wheat and grass-fed beef, which fetch premium prices. Diversification spreads risk and engages different skill sets within the family. Honest work evolves to include hospitality, marketing, and storytelling alongside planting and harvesting. Succession planning is a pressing concern. The average age of farmers continues to rise, and many farms are at risk of fragmentation when owners retire without a clear plan. Our protagonist has watched neighbors struggle with probate battles and property divisions that strain family relationships and diminish farm viability. To avoid this fate, he and his spouse worked with an attorney and financial planner to create a comprehensive succession plan. The plan outlines how the farm's assets will be transferred, how non-farming heirs will be compensated, and how management responsibilities will shift over time. They have held open meetings with their children, inviting questions and ensuring that everyone's voice is heard. The process is ongoing, adapting to changing circumstances, but it provides clarity and reduces potential conflict. Honest work includes confronting difficult topics directly and with compassion. Technology continues to influence farm operations. Satellites, drones, and sensors provide real-time data on soil moisture, plant health, and pest pressure. Software programs integrate this information, enabling precise application of inputs and early detection of issues. He uses a smartphone app to monitor weather alerts and to track equipment performance. The family invests in a small solar array that reduces energy costs and in a battery system that provides backup power during outages. They attend workshops on robotics, autonomous tractors, and other innovations that may shape the future of farming. While not every technology is right for them, staying informed helps them make strategic decisions. Honest work now involves digital literacy and openness to experimentation. Demographic changes also play a role. Rural populations are declining in some areas, affecting schools, businesses, and community services. At the same time, there is interest from new farmers who did not grow up on farms but are drawn to agriculture's purpose. Our protagonist mentors a young veteran who purchased a small plot nearby through a program that helps veterans transition into farming. He finds satisfaction in passing on knowledge and in seeing the land attract new caretakers. He also advocates for policies that support beginning farmers by providing access to land, credit, and education. He knows that the future of farming depends on both retaining family operations and welcoming newcomers who share the values of honest work. As this chapter concludes, consider the future not as a threat, but as an invitation to adapt. The challenges of climate, economics, technology, and demographics are real, but they can be met with resilience, creativity, and cooperation. Our protagonist and his family demonstrate that the meaning of honest work is dynamic. It evolves with circumstances, embraces new tools, and anticipates new responsibilities while staying rooted in enduring values. In the next chapter, we will begin to draw these threads together, reflecting on what his story teaches us about perseverance, community, and the dignity of labor. We will consider how the story resonates beyond the farm and what lessons viewers can take into their own lives. Join us for the beginning of the journey's end. As we near the end of this narrative, it is time to distill the experiences and reflections of our protagonist into broader lessons. His life story is deeply specific, anchored in one place and shaped by particular events. Yet the themes it evokes, perseverance, community, humility, and purpose, resonate far beyond the farm gate. Honest work, as illustrated here, is a universal concept. In this chapter, we reflect on what his journey teaches us and invite you to consider how these lessons apply to your own life, regardless of your occupation. Perseverance emerges as a central thread. Through droughts and floods, market swings, and personal losses, he continued to rise, to plant, to repair, and to hope. Perseverance is not about blind optimism. It is about sustained effort, adaptation, and the courage to face reality. When conditions changed, he changed his practices. When he faced personal grief, he sought solace in work and community. His example reminds us that honest work requires staying engaged even when results are uncertain. It teaches that perseverance is nurtured by purpose. When you know why you are doing something, you find strength to continue. Community support is another key lesson. The narrative shows how neighbors, friends, and family members formed a safety net. They shared equipment, labor, and knowledge. They provided emotional support and practical help during crises. They celebrated together and mourned together. In an era often dominated by individualism, this story underscores the value of interdependence. Honest work flourishes when people recognize that their well-being is tied to the well-being of others. We are encouraged to cultivate communities, whether in our neighborhoods, workplaces, or online, that foster generosity, empathy, and mutual aid. Humility is woven throughout the story. Our protagonist is skilled and experienced, yet he remains open to learning. He listens to younger farmers, adopts new technologies, admits mistakes, and seeks help. He understands that no one can master every aspect of complex systems like agriculture. This humility allows for growth and avoids the pitfalls of arrogance. Honest work is a dialogue between tradition and innovation, between self-reliance and cooperation. It asks us to balance confidence in our abilities with respect for others' expertise and perspectives. Purpose imbues routine tasks with meaning. Our protagonist does not view feeding animals or repairing fences as drudgery. He sees these tasks as part of a larger purpose, feeding his family and community, stewarding the land, and honoring his heritage. Purpose sustains him through difficulties and enhances his joy and successes. In your own life, consider how connecting daily actions to a larger purpose can transform mundane tasks into meaningful ones. Honest work, whatever its form, becomes fulfilling when it aligns with your values and contributes to something beyond yourself. As you reflect on these themes, ask yourself where you see perseverance, community, humility, and purpose in your world. Have you experienced moments when honest work, whether in raising children, volunteering, studying, or building something, brought you a deep sense of satisfaction? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences are part of a larger tapestry of human effort and integrity. By sharing, you help others see that they are not alone in their struggles or triumphs. Community extends beyond geographic boundaries, and this channel can be a place where people from different backgrounds connect over shared values. In the final chapter, we will bring this journey to a close with a reflection on the enduring significance of honest work and an invitation to carry these lessons forward. We will leave our protagonist standing where we first met him, on his porch at dawn, looking out over fields that hold both memories and possibilities. Join us as we conclude this exploration and celebrate the dignity of labor. The morning light returns to the farmhouse porch, and our protagonist stands once more at the threshold of his day. The fields stretch before him as they did when this story began, but now you have walked alongside him through decades of labor, challenge, and growth. This closing chapter reflects on the enduring significance of honest work and invites you to carry its lessons into your own life. Honest work endures because it is grounded in timeless principles. It demands patience when outcomes are delayed and courage when circumstances are unpredictable. It calls for generosity that extends beyond family lines to embrace community members. These principles are not restricted to farming. They apply to any endeavor that seeks to create value with integrity. Whether you are raising children, teaching students, running a business, or caring for neighbors, you engage in honest work when you act with purpose, compassion, and diligence. Our protagonist knows that his life's work will outlast him. He looks at the fence posts he repaired, the trees he planted, and the fields he nurtured, and he sees evidence of his efforts intertwined with those of his ancestors and heirs. This awareness inspires him to make decisions with future generations in mind, to invest in soil health, to conserve water, and to mentor those who will follow. He feels both small and significant. Small because the cycles of nature will continue without him, and significant because his actions contribute to the health of those cycles. Honest work positions each person as a steward rather than a master, entrusted with responsibilities that matter. As you watch him step off the porch and begin his chores, consider the power of intention in your daily life. A kind word, a well-executed task, a moment of patience. These are the building blocks of a meaningful existence. Honest work teaches that excellence is not a destination, but a practice. It is found in how you approach each moment, how you treat others, and how you respond when things go wrong. The satisfaction of knowing you have done your best, regardless of external recognition, is its own reward. This story closes with an invitation. Think about the places in your life where honest work is present. Perhaps it is in the quiet dedication of a caregiver, the meticulous planning of a student, the creativity of an artist, or the perseverance of a small business owner. Share your reflections in the comments below. Your stories enrich this community and remind us that integrity and perseverance are universal. If this narrative has resonated with you, consider subscribing. The meaning of honest work is not captured fully in any one story. It is experienced in the lives of countless individuals who show up day after day to do what is needed. As the sun rises and our protagonist walks towards the barn, the essence of his life is clear: to labor with love, to nurture with care, to adapt with humility, and to trust that the seeds he sows literal and metaphorical, will grow in ways he may never see. That is the quiet, powerful legacy of honest work, and it is available to anyone willing to embrace it today.